Everyone. It's Catrice, and welcome to chapter one of the book club. I am so excited to be reading this book right here with you, Finish What You Start by Peter Hollins. And I mentioned in the intro that I had already peeked at chapter one, and chapter one is so good. It's so jam-packed. Honestly, by the time I was done with chapter one, I felt very self-aware. I also felt very capable. I guess that's the best word for it. He really does a great job of breaking down what it means to finish what you start and why people tend to not finish what they start. And just when I thought there wasn't any more that he could say, he continued to go into like the psychological realms and things that could be inhibiting you. And I'm really, really excited to continue to get through this book. So if you haven't picked up the book yet, you don't have to pick up the book to be a part of the book club. We're here for conversation, we're here for community, but I do encourage it, at least chapter one, or if you want to borrow mine just to read chapter one, let me know. I think it's a good read. So, with all that said, I kind of just want to start with reading a little bit, a smidgen of the first couple of paragraphs, and then we'll get into a little bit of a review of the entire chapter together. So, um, chapter one is called Stop Thinking, Just Execute. And this is on page 11. And the author writes, Esther has thought about it a million times. Stuck in a dead-end desk job for the last 6 years, she has fantasized about not having to deal with the monotony of paperwork, not having to report to a demanding boss, and not having to leave her 2-year-old son at the daycare center every day. And exactly how were such fantasies supposed to be realized when she had to earn a living and make ends meet for her family? She had the answer. She figured she'd start her own baking business right at home. It was all just a fantasy, a thought to conjure to get her through difficult days at work, but one day something felt different. For some reason, she finally decided she's going for it. After all, baking was her one true passion. For years, she's been baking cakes and cookies for her friends, who all said she should think of turning it into a business. So maybe it wasn't such a bad idea, right? I don't know how you felt when you read this chapter, but for me, honestly, it started with the very first sentence of this chapter where it says, Esther has thought about it a million times. And if that didn't just strike you, punch you right in the gut, then I'm not quite sure this book is going to be the best fit for you. But I really want you to take a few minutes to think about that thing that has been festering in your soul for the last few weeks, the last few months, maybe the last few years. I know for me, I have a very creative mind. I have a very forward thinking mind. I am constantly trying to create something new, think of something new, make something more efficient, do something fun, do something out of the ordinary, learn something out of the ordinary. But there's a little bit of a caveat that comes to all the wishfulness and the wandering and the daydreaming. And that is, you can kind of get lost in the daydream. And sometimes, most of the time, I come up with something that's so awesome. I'm like, this one I have to do. Like this one I have to do. But then the next day I come up with something equally as awesome. I'm like, this is the one I have to do. And it gets to the point where all of those things sound like something so amazing, and none of those things ever get done. So when I read that Esther has thought about it a million times, I knew that there's several things that I've thought about a million times. And if I'm being very honest with myself, I don't think we as a humankind have any business letting something just fester in our souls, especially if we're passionate about it, especially if we want to try it, especially if we think it's going to benefit us, especially if we think it's going to elevate us. Like, why wouldn't we just go after the thing? We should be attacking our goals and our dream with enthusiasm and passion, but something stops us. And I think the author hits on a lot of amazing points. If you hear noises in the background, it's my puppy, who unfortunately looks like this. So sorry for any interludes that you might hear, and if I have to take any pauses, because she deserves my attention. As you go through this chapter, the author, Mr. Hollins, says what is following through. Page 14, he asks you, and I think it's important to figure out what is the ins and outs of actually getting to the end result. And he does a really good job of it because he breaks it down to the head, the spine, the hands and the feet, and the heart. And so all of those things kind of intertwine to come to the fruition of the follow through. So the head, he says, is focus. And focus, duh, it's what keeps our eyes on the prize. If you know the direction that you were supposed to be moving in, chances are more likely that you will actually take steps to get there. You have to create a very clear vision, a very clear map for your steps. Your brain is great at coming up with things, but those things need direction. And that's what this is. Those things, your goals, let's not call them things, your goals, let's call them what they actually are, need direction if you are planning on actualizing them. The second thing that the author refers to, the spine, which is self-discipline. And I thought focus was important, and it is important. You need focus in order to guide your steps in the right direction, but self-discipline is really a place where I think a lot of people, myself, I'm talking to included, kind of get tripped up because you have to put your feelings aside in order to be successful. If you're trying to do this thing right here, trying to finish what you start, you have to put your feelings aside. Self-discipline, page 16, is what enables you to get your head down and work when you need to, even if you don't want to. And nobody wants to work. Stop it. You're out here like, I really want to do this really hard thing. It's going to make me tired. It's going to make me sick. I'm going to sweat. I'm going to bleed. I'm going to cry. Said no one ever. We always get really excited and passionate about the thing, but it takes self-discipline to get to the thing, because there's all of that muddiness in between, all the sweat and the blood and the tears. Like, that's real as well. So having the self-discipline to know, excuse me, that you are going to have to push through hard things. And just when I thought he was done, he dips into the hands and the feet, which is the action. And he says, you are not going to get anywhere if you do not put one foot in front of the other. You don't grasp the thing or move forward toward the thing. And if you want to actually know if you are making progress, this is how you know if you're taking actionable steps moving forward. You're getting to point A or from point A to point B. And then he winds this up with persistence or the heart. And this is dire to being successful. And I feel like all of these things in here are a muscle of some sort, because you have to continue to work at how to be good at each one of these things. You're going to have to work at how to be focused or staying focused. You're going to have to work at self-discipline. You're going to have to work at putting a plan in action, and you're definitely going to have to work at persistence. You're going to have to work at it. This means that you are going to stick to something for a prolonged period of time, even when things try to derail you, even when things are going wrong, even when things might not seem right, even when things are hard. And so often things get hard and we get off track, but persistence. And I challenge you to think of what is something that you have persisted through. What is something that was going to derail you but didn't? And in that, really try to dig into what was it that made you make the decision to step to the other side? Because more often than not, people stop. And that's what the author says. He says that after you have all these individual parts, self-discipline, focus, action, persistence, which is the sum total of following through, you should be able to get to the next step. You should feel so excited. You should feel so motivated. At least that's how I feel when I read these things. I'm like, yeah, I've got great focus. I know when I want something and I know how to go after it. Yeah, that's me. I can be disciplined and I can be self-disciplined. I have action. I understand how to make a plan. I have persistence. I feel motivated by this. I feel encouraged by this. I hope you do as well. But the author says, hold on. If following through were so awesome, why don't we do it all the time? Hold on. Puppy break. Okay. If following through were so awesome, why don't we do it all the time? And the fact of the matter is, it's hard. There are so many other things that get in the way. And like I said before, if you are not practicing this, if you're not working this muscle on how to finish what you start, things will come up. And he breaks down the things that are most likely to come up. He calls them inhibiting tactics. We're either going to psychologically get in our way, or we're going to some kind of tactic, some inhibiting tactic is going to get in our way, and it's going to stop us from being successful. The first few inhibiting habits that were mentioned is 1, setting bad goals. 2, procrastination, which we're going to skip over talking about today because I know based on the table of contents that we're going to talk about procrastination later. And so I want to talk about procrastination a little bit later. 3, indulging in temptation and distractions. And 4, poor time management. And so when we're having a conversation about these things, setting bad goals, like what is a bad goal? And sometimes people are like, there's no such thing as a bad goal. Let's just get it in action. And I'm like, hold up, wait a minute. There are such thing as bad goals. First of all, you don't want to set some outlandish goal that you could never get to. That doesn't make sense. That is discouraging from the start. You don't know where to start. You don't have the tools. You don't have the means. You don't have the know-how. You don't have the actual gusto. You have nothing in order to get that, and that just discourages you. And once you get discouraged from that, then you start to develop the habit of not completing goals. You have to give yourself goals that are actually attainable. Again, we're working a muscle. Now, you can give yourself easy goals as well. Too easy goals, that's not going to actually help you, or you're not going to feel motivated to complete those from time to time. We're going to call those easy goals action steps. But those realistic goals, the things that we can actually put a little work into and that we're going to feel proud of when we do, once we achieve those, that's what helps us build the muscle memory to actually finish what we start. So, one, don't set a bad goal. If you need help on how to set goals, I know a million people who are really good goal setters. I will put you in contact with them, or if you want to have a conversation, I'm happy to have that conversation too, but don't put yourself in a bad situation in which you're setting bad goals. Procrastination, like I said, we're going to come back to that later, but I think we all understand the procrastination bug. Temptations and distractions. According to the author, he says the road of following through would be so easy if there were a hallway, or if it were like a hallway with blank walls on either side, and you didn't really have a choice, and you had to keep straight and narrow. But that's not the way the world works. And he calls them that they're shiny trinkets, glittering detour signs. And I love the word glittering detour signs because I'm like, yeah, that's so true. That is so true. Glittering detour signs. It's not that we're going to be able to stop the distractions. We're not going to be able to stop the distractions. We have to be able to put the distractions and temptations in their place. According to him, Mr. Peter says, page 26, you can use strategic avoidance or healthy and moderate use. And either of these are great tactics. I think it's really important to note that it's okay to have the distraction. We're going to have the distraction. But how much time are you actually allowing the distraction to have? And sometimes we're not honest with ourselves about how much time we actually have the distraction, have given the distraction. And the next thing he talks about is time management. I think those two things kind of go hand in hand, and bouncing back to procrastination. So I would encourage you, if you don't really know, like, do an audit on your time. Like, you would do an audit on your bank account. You know, if you were trying to be more financially sound, and you would audit your bank account. You would see where you're spending money. You would see how you're saving money. You would see how all those things need to come together in order to get you towards your financial goals. You would do that. You would do the same thing for your health. You would take a health audit. You would see what you're intaking every single day, the calorie intake, whether or not you're eating fruits and vegetables, whether or not you're eating enough calories, too many calories, whether or not you're drinking the right fluids. You would be able to see in that audit, okay, this is what I'm actually doing. I didn't know that, but till I wrote it down. I'm eating brownies for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then eating, like, maybe a salad every once in a while, thinking I'm doing a good job, but that's not the great job. That's not the best job that I can do for myself. What I really want to do is I want to bounce back and I want to say, okay, this is the black and white of the situation. This is the black and white of where my time is going and how my time is being spent. So after I have the black and white of it, then I can implement the strategies. Then I know where my time is going. Then I can manage it better. I think that is the most helpful thing that I've ever done when it comes to anything that I'm trying to overhaul in my life is, one, let's just take note of where we actually are so that we could move forward accordingly. The author also talks about psychological roadblocks. And I said, I don't even know how we are still getting into such deep topics here, the psychological roadblocks. He says among these are laziness, lack of discipline, fear of judgment, rejection, and failure, perfectionism out of insecurity, and lack of self-awareness. Let's get into the first one, laziness and lack of self-discipline. And as if I didn't feel outed already, I feel even more outed. And it's not that I'm lazy. I'm not lazy. I think I just enjoy lounging more than the average person. And so for me, my time management circles around how can I be the most efficient? How can I get as much done as possible in the beginning of the week so that when we get towards the end of the week, I can lounge and relax just like I want to. So I do understand that within that lounge and relaxation, that I will prioritize that as like a thing. And sometimes that shouldn't be the priority to do, but I'll prioritize it over a lot of things over the weekend because I worked hard. And so for me, I'm just like, am I like working really hard and then like crashing and burning? Is that what's going on? Or calling it lounge time, but I'm actually like completely burnt out and have to reset. I'm not really sure, but I do know that I have a streak of laziness, fear of judgment, rejection, and failure. I find myself to be lucky because I don't necessarily suffer from any of these, but I feel like I'm surrounded by people who typically do. I think that I had a situation that happened to me in my life in which I had given that situation everything that I could. I did all the right things. I talked to all the right people. I read all the things that I could read. I put everything in action I could. And with everything in my being that I had, I gave it everything that I could give. And in doing that, the reactions that I had from people who were close to me were not ones of support that I felt that I should have gotten or reward or acknowledgement. That's the word I'm looking for. It wasn't the acknowledgement. It was more like they were like expecting even more from me. And I was just baffled because I had already given it everything that I could. So I think at that moment, a switch kind of went on in my head. And I recognized that I needed to be able to do my absolute best and I needed to be okay with whatever that was. I needed to be able to celebrate me. I needed to be able to tell myself that it was okay. I needed to be able to motivate myself because I can't look to somebody else for that kind of motivation. I could have let that crush me. Like, oh my gosh, I did all of this and they still don't understand. I could have let that moment crush me, but for me, that was just a switch, and I refuse to let somebody make me feel unhappy, especially when I'm trying so hard. And in that moment too, like the people that I'm referring to, that they're loved ones. I know that they love me. And I know that they would never mean to actually hurt me. And so that made it even easier for me to be able to turn on and off that switch because I knew that this had to be something that I took on personally. So if you are somebody who kind of still is dealing with this fear of judgment, rejection, and failure, you're gonna fail. There's no way out of that. I'm sorry, you're gonna fail. People are gonna judge you. I don't know why, but people are really judgy. Um, I know a lot of people who make a lot of jokes too. And so even in those jokes, like sometimes you end up being the butt of the joke. Like, haha, just laugh about it and get over it. It's not a big deal. It's not the end of the world. It really isn't the end of the world unless you let it define you. And I don't let those things define you. And I want to encourage you don't let those things define me. And I want to encourage you to not let those things define you. Just do your best and know when you have done your best and then celebrate you for doing your best. Perfectionism, I think that's the same thing. I don't really deal with perfectionism. I have I'm self-competitive. Is self-competitive a thing? Internally competitive. I'm not really trying to outdo anybody else, but I am trying to outdo myself. I know what I'm capable of. I know when I've given it 100%. And sometimes you can kind of get into the, well, I know I'm not going to give this my 100% effort, so I'm not really going to get started, but you should get started. Once you get started, you get to continue to master your craft. That's why it's called mastering your craft. You don't roll over one day and you're great at something. It's not how it works. You work at it. Lack of self-awareness is, I think that is a huge blow to you if you don't have this. And it's not something that I think I'm trying to say the right thing here. Not that you necessarily get more self-awareness with age, but hopefully you do. I think that you become more self-aware as you start to work on it. But in this day and age, it's hard because your brain is bombarded with so many things that it can kind of throw you off track of what you think is your self-awareness. So being able to turn off everything and really zero in on who you are, what you want, what you're doing, what you're great at, what you're not good at, and being able to spitfire this stuff. Like if you can't do that, if you can't tell somebody a few things quickly about yourself that you're good at, not self-aware. If you can't tell somebody what motivates you, not self-aware. Be self-aware, be self-aware. It's so important because that's how you know how to continue to craft yourself and how you continue to better yourself along the way. What do we do if we follow through? And I think you know the answer to that. If you were able to follow through, so many things, so many doors are open to you. I love this chapter because it's a lot of obvious things, but it breaks it down in just a tactful manner. And it reminds you that, hey, these are the steps, these are the things that are necessary in order for you to be successful. You have access to all of these things. So the only thing you need to do is learn how to make these tactics work for you and not against you. I hope you like this chapter as much as I like this chapter. I'm very passionate about it. If you can't tell, just a couple of self-reflection things. I would encourage you, if you're a writer, go write some stuff down right now. This is a good time to self-reflect and be self-aware. And in that self-reflection, I want to know, let's bounce back to that first opening statement. What have you thought about a million times? How did you feel when you heard that? And did it punch you the way it punched me? I can't wait for chapter 2. Chapter 2 is all about staying hungry. So again, if you haven't picked up the book, Finish What You Start by Peter Hollins, go grab the book, and I will see you in the next video for chapter 2. Bye.